Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Luke from InfoSecLuke. We're here for the third episode of the weekly InfoSec brief. We've got about three stories to get through today. One is the St. Paul Cyberattack, wherein the National Guard actually had to be deployed in a state of emergency. We've got some news about quantum cybersecurity, and then we'll close it out with looking at some recent ransomware and AI threats. So stay tuned. So jumping right into the first story, this is one coming from Minnesota, where I happen to live. St. Paul specifically. It says cybersecurity professionals provide insights into St. Paul's cybersecurity attack. And basically, as a little bit of background, what happened was July 25th, so 5 days ago as of the recording of this video, the city of St. Paul was hit by a deliberate, coordinated digital attack that forced officials to shut down city information systems, affecting Wi-Fi in public buildings, libraries, and administrative networks. Emergency services and 911 remained functional. Governor Tim Walz declared a state of emergency and activated the Minnesota's National Guard Cyber Protection Unit. The FBI and two cybersecurity firms are supporting the recovery. As far as the impact, there's disruption continues in libraries and municipal services. Experts warn such city-level breaches can cost millions and may involve ransomware-style attacks. So security professionals are all over this. It was a major event in the sense that you don't often see entire cities become subject to attacks. I don't think that we necessarily know who the bad actor was. But again, they're just issuing the standard warnings of the risks of reused passwords, phishing, urging strong hygiene and unique credentials to try to prevent such attacks. I did want to go ahead and play a little bit of this video and kind of just comment over it here. So let's go ahead and play it.
Have been targeted by hackers as well. Raya Katene looked into their experience to try to get an idea of the scope of this attack. Raya?
One thing that'll be very telling, Julie, is just how quickly the city is able to bring its services back online. The cybersecurity professional I talked to said that if the city does restore its services within the next couple of days, that's a pretty good indication that they have a good handle of what it is that's going on. But if this does drag on, he says it could mean that they're facing a pretty sophisticated threat.
Yeah, and by sophisticated, they're probably thinking of like an APT or an advanced persistent threat, which is when an attacker will infiltrate systems such as this infrastructure for the city of St. Paul, and they'll be present for months, 6 months to a year sometimes, just what they call living off the land, and they've got full access to all the systems, but they're pretty good at covering their tracks, so let's keep watching here.
Big questions are swirling around Minnesota's capital city.
They're in some trouble
after St. Paul leaders revealed they're working to stop a cyber attack several days after it began on Friday.
They're in a situation where things got bad enough they chose to take down most of their critical infrastructure in order to keep the bad people from doing more bad things. That's the nuclear option.
A cybersecurity expert with more than 2 decades of experience, Bryce Austin says time will tell just how extensive this attack is, how people will be impacted, and what the responsible party is after.
Most of the time, these bad guys are after money. That's their goal, plain and simple. But that's not always the case.
That was the case in several previous cyber attacks on major cities across the country, including in Atlanta, Dallas, and Columbus.
Oh, wow.
It took several.
So I guess I was wrong when I said earlier that it said several other major cities have been subject to these types of attacks. Maybe I'm just paying attention more because, like I said, it's in my backyard. But yeah, it could be some kind of ransomware thing. It could be just someone trying to cause disruption for the enjoyment of it. But I do hope they get things back online and figure out where the breach came from and try to harden their systems. So interesting story. And if any more news comes out, we can always report next week. So kind of pivoting over to our next story, we'll be looking at a study that came out from a company named Key Factor, wherein they're saying that nearly half of enterprises are unprepared for quantum cybersecurity threats. So recent figures have shown that nearly half of the surveyed enterprises aren't prepared for the quantum cryptography, highlighting a serious readiness gap. And analysts are kind of comparing this scale of migration to Y2K. As you may remember, depending on how old you are, the buzz around Y2K and how the change in the date format was supposed to bring down almost all the computer systems in the world. And there was a legitimate concern there, and a lot of work was done to kind of preempt that from happening. But similar in nature to the major shift that quantum computing will bring as far as being able to crack all current cryptographic standards. And so we got to be prepared for that. They're anticipating Q-Day, or Quantum Day as they're calling it, between 2030 and 2050, and a compliance horizon by 2030. So that gives us, about 5 years to try to get ready for this. And it involves the mass deployment of smart meters and embedded devices globally, which is a major challenge. It requires firmware and hardware upgrades to implement PQC securely before the compliance deadline. Yeah, this article is pretty interesting, just showing that probably some of I would imagine, the leaders in this space are like the big financial institutions with a lot of, skin in the game, where they just can't afford to get their cryptography broken. But other companies too, you want to make sure that you're kind of keeping up with this. They call it PQC readiness. And there's also this concept when we talk about quantum computing and quantum cryptography of harvest now, decrypt later, or HNDL, also called store now, decrypt later, SNDL. And the idea is that their adversaries are just collecting and storing all kinds of encrypted data right now, knowing that someday quantum computers will be able to break those current encryptions and put that data into clear text. So, they're hard at work on the adversarial side, and we should definitely be hard at work on the defender side as well. So I did prompt chat here, what are the leading companies in the PQC space? And it lists number 1, IBM, who's co-developed 2 standards or algorithms that were selected for by NIST for standardization, Crystal's Kyber and Crystal's Dilithium. Google has also been an active participant in the NIST PQC process, testing hybrid PQC algorithms in Chrome and TLS connections. Microsoft's a player in the game. They've contributed Picnic and Cyc, S-I-K-E, although Cyc was later broken. And then we've got Amazon, of course. So all the big cloud vendors are working on this. A company called Thales, which is a leader in encryption and hardware security modules with PQC readiness programs. And there's several other listed here. So if you're interested, I would definitely recommend doing some research. If you're a customer for any one of these major cloud vendors, maybe reach out to your account rep and see what's in the works and if there's anything that we need to be doing on our end. And then finally, we'll pivot over to our last story here, which is ransomware spree looms after SharePoint breach. So if you hadn't heard, SharePoint, nearly 400 Microsoft SharePoint servers across the U.S. federal and local agencies were compromised, suspected by a Black Basta variant group using advanced persistent methods. So this was a pretty recent event, but you can see that several federal government agencies, including at the Departments of Energy, Homeland Security, and Health and Human Services, have been hacked, likely by groups linked to the Chinese government. Malicious hackers have attempted to break into more than 90 state and local government offices, according to Randy Rose, VP of Security Operations and Intelligence at the Center for Internet Security. And last week, researchers warned that attackers were also stealing machine keys once they broke in, which would allow them to return even after a vulnerable SharePoint server was patched. So again, that idea that attackers will find a way into your system, and they'll create backdoors, they'll do anything they can to maintain that access and sort of just lay low in your systems and do whatever espionage or observation before they kind of, either do a ransomware attack and force you to pay after they've encrypted your data, that type of thing. But this is just all bad. This SharePoint, vulnerability was a 0-day that got exploited. And, definitely something that is outside of our control as cybersecurity professionals, but we need to be staying up on the latest and making sure that we're patching those vulnerabilities and then just keeping out a vigilant eye for anything that may have, taken place after the fact as far as advanced persistent threats. And then nearing the end of this episode, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the cybercrime group called ScatteredSpider. So they've achieved or attracted a lot of attention from government authorities in several nations around the globe. It's unclear exactly who they are. I think the article goes on to say that they may be made up of about 1,000 members of largely English-speaking young men, including many teenagers from the US and the UK. But they're really adept at their methods of tricking users into handing over user credentials or bypassing MFA, multi-factor authentication, which can then, of course, open the door to establish persistence and steal company data and even demand ransom payments. So the FBI and CISA have warned that although they are traditionally more targeting hospitality and telecommunications and retail, they're also moving on to other sectors as well. So something to keep an eye out as this hacker gang continues to wreak havoc. In 2023, that was kind of their debut. I don't know if you guys recall the big ransomware attack against the casino giant MGM resorts, and so that was kind of their debut into this spotlight. But they continue to be alive and well. So ScatteredSpider, just something to keep an eye on. One more thing to look out for. And I know we didn't cover this in the intro, but I did want to kind of include one bonus article here from Reuters about Palo Alto's $25 billion acquisition of the company Cyberark as it tries to target rising AI-driven threats. So that's a huge acquisition, $25 billion. One of the largest tech takeovers this year. It underscores a consolidation in the cybersecurity industry as customers streamline vendors after facing breaches while relying on a patchwork of firms. So again, bringing that under one umbrella is going to be interesting. The article goes on to talk about how that Israeli startup group Wiz was acquired by Alphabet, Google's parent company, for $32 billion in March. And so yeah, this is just something to keep an eye on as far as how those tool sets might change and evolve post-merger. And just one more tidbit, for those who don't know, Cyberark specializes in privileged access management, a technology that helps organizations safeguard sensitive systems by limiting and monitoring access to critical accounts. It's got many large customers, including Carnival Corp, Panasonic, and Aflac. So yeah, definitely going to make some waves in the stock market as well if you're watching that kind of thing. So that'll do it for this week's InfoSec brief. I hope that you guys found it somewhat educational or informative. If there's things that you'd like me to cover in the future, just let me know in the comments below. Any interesting news that you see percolating in the cyberspace or anything to do with AI, that type of thing, definitely happy to include that in the next segment. So if you stuck around this long, I definitely appreciate you hanging out. And this is InfoSecLuke signing out.